Awesome. Hey guys, Brad Duncan here, coming from BlueVoyant. We're going to be talking a little bit about Microsoft Sentinel tonight. Starting off, just give a little backstory on the company I work for, and validation of myself as well. Brad Duncan, Principal Solutions Architect, working for BlueVoyant. I've been in the IT industry for about 16 years. I've been working with Azure technologies and Microsoft security technologies for about the past 10. Ran an implementation team, been an implementer along the way, had pitfalls and seen everything away in between. Just a little bit about me, a little bit about the company that I work for. If the slide machine will work. There we go, guys. The company I work for is BlueVoyant. We're founded by Jim Rosenthal and Thomas Glockner, former CEO of Reuters and COO of Morgan Stanley. These guys saw a need in the industry for a cybersecurity platform that not only covered your MDR platform, but also your supply chain defense needs and your digital risk protection needs. So realistically, we're an end-to-end platform. We'll protect you from the inside, going out to your supply chain, or then we'll protect you against any of your vendors that may be causing issues along the way, and anything that's out there in the deep dark web that may be preventive for you guys as well. Just a little highlight on that and our model. We're not a black box. We work in your environment. We take really a heavy co-management approach, working in your Sentinel, investing in your IP and property, our IP and property into your Sentinel. So just a little background on BlueVoyant and who we are and who we'll be talking about tonight. So starting out the story, we're going to have a little personal moment here. This was me about a year ago. Actually, yesterday. I was 320 pounds. Walking around New York City, and I was really miserable for about 10 miles of that day. I felt terrible. Came away from it saying, I need to make a change in my life. I need to do something different. And you guys are thinking, why in the world is this guy talking about his weight loss? Well, this weight loss, I needed some central way to track things, some way I could feed all these data sources I had, ways that I could actually find out how many calories I was eating, what I was doing on the daily for walking, things like that. I would take that information from outside sources, let's say my Apple Watch, and track a walk or track a run, track my strength training, and then get more into it. And the more and more I got into it, I started tracking more things. I started looking at my carbs, thank you. Not part of the recording. There we go. Yeah, that's the picture. I'm standing to the side, guys. It's kind of hard to see the dialogue box impression. So yeah, I used that tool, MyFitnessPal, as a way to create a single source of truth for myself. That's essentially what Sentinel is doing for you in your environments, right, guys? You're taking data sources that are from the outside that maybe are correlating to your particular needs for security and trying to feed it into one source and connect it all together so you get a holistic picture. That's really where Sentinel shines. And along the way with my weight loss journey, I figured out that, man, I was taking probably 30 minutes just going through each little thing and saying, oh, great, I want to make this recipe. I want to make French toast tonight, but I want it to be healthy. So I figured out that I can make recipes in the FitnessPal app and create automation that would let me personally say, okay, with this level of accountability, I can just add a recipe and it'll automatically show up in that day with the proper calories, with the proper measurements and everything all against it. That's what the store portion of Sentinel does great. So Sentinel gets all the data feeds in, create your analytics, create your alerts for that, right? And then on top of that, it's got source. So you're able to come in and say, I need to do an automation. And it's really a key differentiator in a lot of ways for Sentinel as a platform to be able to do that, right? So let's talk a little more about something that's not how I lost 138 pounds. Going into Sentinel tools and architecture, guys, how it works, what it is, all that kind of thing. So the actual architecture of Sentinel is really cool and unique how they do it. Initially, Sentinel was a place where you'd get a log analytics workspace connected, and as it advanced along, Azure Lighthouse came in and made for places people like us on MSSPs that are able to easily connect into your environment and work, right? So Azure Lighthouse gives us a portal to connect into your portal, so we can then work in your environment and manage your environment, right? So Sentinel itself takes machine learning, takes behavioral analytics, and things like that to be able to create good picture stories for you to give you good security outcomes. You can connect just about any data source in there, right? And then it also lets you connect your entire XDR stack that you might have from Defender. It's a great tool. It works really well. And then really the only thing I would say that Sentinel does not do well from an architecture standpoint, it's there, but it's the case management. And really, you're not going to want to manage your case from within Sentinel, right? You're going to want to manage your case from within your ITSM. You can get your case and playbook it and send it over with the Logic app into your environment for that. Maybe it's ServiceNow in this case. That's what I'm showing on the slide, right, guys? But in my opinion, you don't want to work on your incident from here. You want to have the ability to see your incident there to track, log against it. But you want to work that in your ITSM tool. Go on to the next slide here. So the different tools that are available within Sentinel. How do I get my data in, right? I mean, it's really the biggest thing, right? That we're going to connect all of our data sources from the outside. Well, how do we do it? We do that with data connectors. Data connectors are essentially ways to connect data and parse tables into your log analytics workspace and then into your Sentinel, right? So, and you can't really do much with that data if it's just sitting there, right? So how are you going to create rules to create incidents against it, right? The way you're going to do that is create analytic rules, things that can actually query that data and say, hey, if I query this piece of data against this portion of the Azure Active Directory logs, I can see that there's been sign-ins against this, this, and this, and for this period. It gives you a way to make creative analytics to be able to figure out what's actually on the table. And then you don't want to do that all the time, right? You want to look at some pictures. We're all Neanderthals at the end of the day. We like looking at pictures. So that's where workbooks come in. Workbooks in Sentinel are essentially visualizations of the data that's behind it. It's a great way to show graphs and charts and things of that nature that are in the environment. And it just gives you a visual capacity, and it can make it really easy when you're trying to actually figure out what's going on in an environment, right? Case we're going to look at today is kind of in sign-in logs. We're going to go into some slides in a minute, or out of the slides in a minute, and go into an actual Sentinel portal and look at that too. So, and as we were talking about earlier, that SOAR function, I needed that SOAR function for me personally so I could keep myself accountable, keep track of everything. There is SOAR functionality for Sentinel using playbooks and automation rules. Playbooks are essentially, if you've ever used an Azure Logic app, it's a Logic app for security. It takes the logic that you put in it and say, hey, I need a user that ran against this analytic rule to have their password reset because clearly they're doing something they shouldn't be doing. The playbook can do that, but you need some way to actually make it trigger against the analytic rule. That's where automation rules come in. Automation rules are essentially if this, then that statements to say, hey, trigger off this play. Do this. If I say that this user had 50 missed sign-ins, clearly something's going on, I need to run a playbook against it. It'll run the play for you, essentially. Playbooks are no good unless there's actually something to run it. So in this case, it's an automation rule. It's a great little tool for that as well. And we've discussed a little bit about the tools, the architecture, my weight loss, and things in between. But where it really comes down to is the people, process, and how you optimize it, right, guys? What's your data ingestion strategy? Do you plan to dump everything into Sentinel? Do you want to dump everything into Sentinel? You really don't. It's looking at the tables and finding what's actually going to be good for you as a security analyst. What's going to be good for you as a security practitioner? Looking and saying, maybe I need Azure sign-in logs, or maybe I don't need audit logs at that table. Sending all that data up there, not only does it increase your cost and then makes your chief financial officer a little mad at you. It also kind of makes the entire Sentinel experience a little noisy, right? So you want to stay away from having so much noise. You want to find that right balance. So you got to figure out your data ingestion strategy. That's part of your process, right? Who will run and manage the tools for you? That's a great question. Are you going to have a third party that's going to come in and be able to create the analytic rules? That's going to have to constantly be updated, worked on, threat intelligence faded into it. How are you going to actually work against these tools, work with or against these tools? The way you can do that is actually finding either a good provider or hiring good staff. There's ways to do it, but it's about finding not only the process, the people, but how to get those security outcomes optimized as well. That's really a great story to tell for folks to look at and say, hey, I've got a lot of data coming in, but I'm not getting much out of it. This is where you come back to yourself. Do I have the people? Do I have the process? Do I have the right optimizations? So we're going to kick out of this on the slides. It's kind of it on the slides, guys. We'll go over here to Sentinel for a little bit here and actually go into the tool. Any questions from the slides? I can see it. Can you? Oh, no. Okay. Any questions from the audience that's out there about any of the slides or any of the things we talked about there? Great. So just kicking in here. This is, oh, hold on. Somebody's coming off mute. Heard something there.
Hey, hi. Hi, Brad. Can you hear
Hey, how's it
me?
going? Yeah, I can hear you, Mail.
Yeah, just I have a short query just to clear my understanding. That is like you mentioned about data connector. So I just would like to know actually what the difference between data connector and the like agents. Like, so for example, if I would like to send data from a Linux box to the Sentinel, do I need to install any agent, or like how could I send here?
So it would depend on what connections are currently out there or would have to be created. So really? Oh, sorry, guys. The audience getting in here can't hear you. Sorry. Um, he essentially asked how would a third party source that maybe doesn't have a data connector or how that data connector works to get data into an environment. So data connectors, like I said, are a way to establish third-party sources. You would not have to necessarily install an agent. With Sentinel, what you do is you create a collector. So it would be a syslog server typically. If it's an on-prem source, you send it to the syslog connector or to the syslog, and then the data collector sends it up into Sentinel. All those are in Ceph format. If it's a API, a third-party SaaS source, as long as it's a REST API, you usually can create a connection for it and send it up that way. Does that help answer your question, Will?
So that means we do not need agent, right? There's if to use connector. No.
No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and if there isn't a connector, there's a good chance that someone like us at BlueVoyant can make that connector, or you yourself can make the connector. It's essentially just a function app. Cool. All right. So yeah, just kicking in here a little bit about the Sentinel portal. This is kind of the overview you get every time you come in on the front page, right? You get to see your incidents, your automations that are currently running the environment, the data that's kind of pulled in and what's been received the last 24 hours. If you have any unhealthy collectors and the active connectors that are in your environment as well, and the different analytic rules, right? So we said one of the first things you need to do is have data connectors, right? So the story we're telling here today is we have Azure Active Directory sign-in logs, right? We've made the connection here. We've gone into this page and said we need data types from sign-in logs, audit logs, and non-interactive and service principal logs, managed identity logs as well. Typically, you can come in here if it isn't already set up in this environment. We already have it set up. Turn those logs on and make sure all the right sign-in logs are set up. and create a connection. That's all done within this portal right here on this particular page for anything that's really cloud app that's connected already. This particular data source, it's an Azure source. So a lot of the Microsoft sources already have easy way connectors. There's like a checkbox and a couple of them that are real simple and makes it easy. You just set a data collection set on the other end. For this one, there's a story we're telling is around sign-in logs today, right? So we've got Azure Active Directory sign-in logs coming in. I don't have this analytic rule deployed in this environment, but this is the story we're telling. So you can come in here and see that we have active rules, and then we can make rule templates. Rule templates are templates that are already available from Microsoft and the Content Hub. It's a great source to get started, just where if you want to get out and learn. Another great thing about Azure is you can come in with Sentinel and do a 90 days on free logging and do like a 30-day trial and kind of see what's going on in the environment. This particular incident right here, let me move that out the way in my screen, guys. Sorry about that. Identifies failed login attempts, right? So the story we're telling is we've connected our Azure data connector, Azure Active Directory data connector for our sign-in logs. And we set this analytic rule up, and we said that we need to know when there is failed login attempts against the Azure portal. So then we can also go and see in our workbook, which remember we said earlier is visualizations of the data behind it. You can see that there's been some privilege roles activated, some things from user Jeff that I can look at and see what's going on in this environment. Why are all these operation counts against against Anthony, against David, and look and see maybe there's something we need to do. Maybe there's an action we need to take against one of these users because they're not only creating failed login attempts to the Azure portal, but it looks like somewhere along their lines there's potentially for a breach because unknown here, David, Anthony, they've gone in and made changes to the service principal. That's where automation rules come in. So automation rules let you come in and create incidents with this, if this and that statement. So if we wanted to come in and have a playbook run, and that particular playbook would be for disable, or let's say reset user password. I can come here and say reset Azure AD password. I can create this if this then that statement that will let me say when an incident is created and the analytic rule name contains Azure AD failed logins, I can then say the incident provider, the Sentinel, or a defender in this case as well, because everything kind of connects together. Yet again, data connectors. And say when that happens on a certain number of order, and I can add in particular more conditions, and the severity of it is equal to high, we should reset this user's password. The reason we should reset this user's password is because they're having failed login attempts, and it looks like they've had some previous attempts where they've changed stuff in the environment, so something's going on with them. I can apply this, and the automation rule will run when this particular Azure AD function of this analytic rule runs. I could also manually run into these playbooks as well. It all depends on tolerance with playbooks, right? And automation. How deep in SOAR do you want to go? Do you want to go to the point where everything is automated? No. This goes back yet again to those people, processes, and optimizations and procedures for your particular use case. I've worked with hospital systems where I've been told if we disable a user or we disable and isolate this machine, you'll kill someone. And I never want that on my conscience, and I'm sure no one in this group would ever want that on their conscience. So you have to have those processes and procedures to figure out what's the right tool to use and at the right time. Maybe you need to contact the user first. Maybe you need to figure out what's actually going on with the machine. Maybe it's not a high alert. Maybe it's just something informational, and then investigate and then run this reset and run it against the particular incident that's created. That's another thing that's really kind of key to highlight here is when you have an incident in the portal, a lot of the reason that it's able to run against these particular entities that are out there is when it comes against in here. Is this a good one? Yes, good one. It can say, we'll run it against BV demo, AIQ, DC. Say, hey, we need to reset. or isolate that machine. Any questions about anything I just showed in there in the Sentinel portal?
We don't have a speaker. You can just raise your voice.
I was actually finishing up. This was the Q&A period, guys. So that being said, that's kind of what I wanted to show off in Sentinel. That's kind of the slideshow I want to go. This is where I wanted to leave some time for everyone just to bounce questions, ask things that are going on in the environment. What can I do to help? Man, not a dry eye in the house. Yeah, the objective was to just give an overview of the capabilities of Sentinel, what it is, how it works, things like that, that maybe people in the group don't necessarily know just yet. So
I have a question. It's a general question. It's Mohibul here, yeah, again. So it is a SIEM tool, right? SIEM.
say it one more time. I'm sorry. There's a question going on in the audience too. So
Oh, sorry. You could take the question from audience, yeah.
one second. Summarizing how much it costs, things like that. Sentinel. So Sentinel, yeah, we can actually. The benefit of Sentinel is having a single source of truth. At the end of the day, having a single source of truth for your environment, right? So right now, what are you? If I asked you, what do you send all your logs? What do you do with your logs for security? What do you do with your security logs today? Mm-hmm. But where do you send them? Yeah, where are you sending them right now to create a single source of truth for yourself? Yeah. That's what Sentinel's meant to do. It's meant to be a big correlation engine. Let's say you've got log sources from Cisco, from an outside, let's use Prisma Cloud as well. You send that to Sentinel so that you can create analytic rules that will then let you correlate that data and create a user story that maybe that particular user is having a problem with their security aspect. Maybe they're creating password sprays in the environment, as an example. They're doing password sprays in the environment. So some that's just showing off like brute force, or impossible travel would be another great example, especially when we're talking about third-party logs like Cisco, showing that maybe this particular user logs in every day from this IP and it's behind this VPN. Maybe today they're not. Why are they not? Yeah. Yeah. As long as you have a way to send it up. So that's where can you be sent to a syslog server? Yeah, you're good. There's a way. Even if it's not in Ceph format, us at BlueVoyant, we found ways to get around that as well to, convert it into stuff. So. What parameters?
What actually capture single source production?
I mean, production. I've actually got customers that are asking me right now about dev too. A lot. They're actually trying to capture what's going on in their dev environments. You can send anything you want, really. It's up to you. It's up to your business outcomes at the end of the day. Or if you're a development center, let's say you're a SaaS application and you have a heavy dev environment. Would you maybe want to capture all those logs and send them to someplace to make sure that the dev environment that you're product IP is developed and is safe, yeah, you probably want to send those. And figure out what's best from there.
Sending your security log Sentinel, how does that capture the environment source?
So when I say source of truth, I'm talking about from a security aspect. So whether sign-in logs, for example, that's a really just a simple example I can use. If someone is signing into the dev environment, and that dev environment, typically he signs in 50 times a day because he's going in and using that dev environment a lot. But then all of a sudden he's signing in 400 times a day when you want to know why that user is now all of a sudden signing in 400 times a day. That's the example I used there.
So if I want to run security,
Yes.
authorization,
Tactics, techniques that are using the environment, spear phishing.
and it's part of Azure.
It's part of Azure. It's pay as you go actually, and then they have commit tiers as well that you can do.
There's a calculator online.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was gonna ask him, is it 447 per gig? It's pay as you go.
There's a calculator online we can put in through where the environment variable, like data ingestion, how big your logs are.
Yeah.
It's your data center.
Yeah, first 90 days of logs are free as well. Yes, sir.
So include like just basic errors, like
So like strictly security. So, and I say that because I've seen a lot of people go down this path where they've said, well, I want my operation to go into Sentinel too. Why? You're going to create security incidents for operational, like just full? Not necessarily. There are other functions of Azure that let you do that. You know, you have functions in Azure that are specifically meant for that, like Azure Monitor. You would use those Azure Monitor. Yeah. So those tools are used for things like that, where you're doing operational, checking into what your log collection sets are, things like that. Making sure that maybe disk on Brent 2 is not full. So that's kind of the differentiator there is you use one tool for security and you focus solely on security there. And then you have another tool that you use solely to focus on your operation. So Defender is actually a XDR. It's an extended detection and response platform that you would use to then feed logs into Sentinel. So you would take and install an agent, a Defender for Endpoint agent on Brent's machine, and that would be an extension of something you would use to feed logs into Sentinel to find out, that maybe Brent has meeting cats on his machine and he's out there in the world and he's trying to hack something. Being malicious as a malicious actor.
Defender actually enforces threat protection.
Yes, I think that's a great summary too.
But it'll lock down your endpoint, it'll lock down your identity, it'll protect data across all that gets reported to Sentinel. What's correlated is looking for extreme data correlation that should be a security. Trying to surface that so you're not going through all those problems.
This is all security, right? They call it security. You guys are, if you're an E3 license user or you've got an E5 license, you're using Azure a lot already. You're putting applications up there, you're using the cloud resources. But if you've got an E5 license, you've got access to the Defender stack, to Microsoft Sentinel, and you want to use it to do the log aggregation for all the logs coming into your environment, right? That's what Sentinel is used for. It correlates and analyzes to give you this breakdown, really. And then Defender is going to compete, Defender on the endpoint competes with CrowdStrike, which I know all you guys have heard of, right? It's an EDR platform, Sentinel-1. But if you're a Microsoft shop, Microsoft has a consolidated story. All that Defender stack, Sentinel, it all is integrated, it all talks together. So if you're using Microsoft today and you've got the license, why aren't you using Microsoft Security? is,
To be clear on what I think you're saying,
yeah,
all the Defender 365 logs, so Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Cloud App, Defender for Identity, and Defender for Office /Teams, all those are ingested for free. You don't pay for the ingestion like you would if you were putting it in Splunk or to
Logarithm.
You would pay for log ingestion on those platforms.
Yeah.
Right.
When the logs are ingested in Sentinel, what exactly happens to the process? Ingestion? Where's the out? Yeah.
Dang sales guys.
Yeah.
No, it goes into log analytics workspace. That's the actual where the storage is log analytics workspace in Azure.
It's ran against our threat intelligence database at Microsoft. Well, that's where all the
What is it? The analytics. What is it doing? What is it parsing out?
So
Different keywords.
not necessarily keywords. You write KQL queries, and so it's essentially where Azure Active Directories, connector source, sign-in log. After X number of times, let's say 20, event failed log on, it'll actually create an alert. So that's what that essentially is. I can show you that on screen real quick if you want.
Yeah.
So this is what I was talking about. This is KQL. Let during time range 1 day, loop back 7 days to look to see from the past 7 days, failed with sign-in IPs, number of times.
7 days.
Yeah, second line up here. Threshold on the IP count is 2. So that means the number of IPs over time of the IP before there's an issue is 2.
That's not coming through.
We're over here having an internal conversation, and everybody that's sitting on the call is like, what in the world are they talking about? We're breaking down some KQL, guys. Trying to break it down a little bit. As we were talking, let successful portal sign-ins equal Azure portal sign-ins. That's the actual data connector log source in that table in the log analytics workspace. We go in here, look and see where time generated equals a go. Going back up to the lets, that's what saying let look back. Well, results in that time period were from different incident IDs that were created, tagging the identities not resolved to friendly names, or to the GUID that was up there. There was a GUID up there a little bit further on into the actual KQL. There's a KQL is the language developed for Sentinel, right, and for log analytics. It's derived from SQL. So
Yeah.
Custo, yeah. Custo query language. Where you can look for a time generated using distinct user principal name. Oh yeah, hey, anybody wants swag? Anybody wants swag while they're in this room? See this man. BlueVoyant swag, and that's probably gonna be like a t-shirt or something. Anybody like t-shirts, socks? Yeah.
You'll have to put it up on the screen.
I can put them. Any other questions before we do? We want to break down more, or do we want to? We good? Good. Okay. You're welcome. Number of alerts you could fire. Define 450. Yeah. We take and try to do. What you find is that you really don't want a lot of alerts. You want to take and find where you can take alerts and create new query language and break them down more and create risk-based scoring for a lot of them. Going back to the primary example I like to use this, which is impossible travel and password spray. A lot of times those two things are going to correlate together. So maybe you want to create a correlation rule that says, hey, this user's showing impossible travel and they're doing a password spray. Somebody's trying to brute force this user. They're clearly not trying to log in where they are, and they clearly got them. They're going to create a risk-based score using that and try to create a different story to say, hey, instead of having one alert rule that fires that says this person's got impossible travel, and then 10 more down that says this user has now got a password spray against them, why don't you have them in the same query? Why are you not running them together? Figure out what's going on with the incident. And then also, why are you not taking third-party log sources to say, look at this parse table and say, is this person logging in from the IP they usually log into? No, they're not. Let's look and see again. Where are they logging in from? That's Pakistan. Why do I want them logging in from Pakistan? I don't want them logging in from Pakistan. They live in North Carolina. They live in Charlotte. He lives in Charlotte.
Yeah.
And say, going off of this, looking at this table, and going off the risk-based scoring that you can create in another table, another log table, to say, hey, this user typically logs in from North Carolina with this IP this many times a day, this many times a month. Now all of a sudden they're logging in from Pakistan and they're trying to guess their password, or there's somebody's trying to brute force their password. That's what that boils down to, is finding ways to take one query, one alert rule, and break it from, well, take 5 alert rules, excuse me, and break it down to 1. To not only create less noise in the environment, but also create better security outcomes.
Good one.
Yeah.
Want to automate that. The other benefit is
Yes.
a lot of alerts. Great. Like I have a bunch of alerts. Because knowing and identifying things that are within very common knowledge, automate those responses so you have fewer alerts all the time rather than looking at everything. Like automatically working with that.
Yeah.
Why do you have to have a human?
Yeah.
That should be fully automated.
And that should be fully automated to a point. Not where you're resetting users or isolating machines that maybe are critical to infrastructure.
And who cares about that, guys, are the security analysts, right? On the SOC team,
Agree to
security
that.
operations team. Those are the folks that are going to care about those automation rules that are built in. I mean, if you're a cloud architect, you don't really care about that. But who cares is the CISO at an organization, the VP of security operations, and the analysts that are sitting in the SOC looking at these alerts constantly and trying to, identify what's a true positive and what is a false positive, right? What's not really, an alert that has malicious intent behind it.
And that's where our platform is really shines too. It takes vendor alerts, Microsoft. Look side-eyed over here at Chad. It says this is informational, but really it's probably a medium-sized alert, because a lot of times Microsoft will take an alert that's malware, for example, blocked on a machine, and it'll say it's informational. The reason I say it's informational is because it was blocked. They don't care. But really, you need to investigate into that more. You need to figure out what's going on with that machine. Why do you have malware on it? Why are people trying to download malware? We typically rescore those in our system to say medium. So we take some of our AI and ML and proprietary sources and refeed that out to figure out what's actually going on in the environment. So
A lot of customers, when they deploy this type of solution, whether it's even ours or someone else's, will do a managed service on the other end. So they're not constantly adding more headcount to their staff. and just outsourcing that entire investigation response and just giving you action, patch this, fix this, deploy the CDE. That makes sense.
All right, I've taken a lot from this side of the room, and I feel like I've kind of neglected over here. Any questions, guys?
Is there any best practice of using the volumes?
So you're going to find this great. BlueVoyant wrote the guide to deploying Sentinel. So I can actually give you that guide. Yes, there are best practices, and we've developed them. There's quite a few. So I'm personally not going to be able to go through everything that's in that guide. But yeah, there are best practices to create it. And we actually work with Microsoft to create that guide. So anything else? Anybody on the call that has been neglected as well? I'm sorry. We've been having a great conversation in the room. There's some audio issues we had today. Anything I can answer for anybody out that's out on the call today? Don't want anybody to feel neglected. Anyone at all. I think it was from Jessica. It was for a form that you guys can use here as well.
Yeah, there's a QR code, Brad, and it looks like Townsend has a question as well.
See if I can get that QR code up for you guys. 1 second. I'll look at the question. Is this the right one? Yeah, there you go. You guys want to scan that? Let me know. Look at the question in the chat here. Any macOS endpoint log collection tools other than Defender? Ooh, good question. Oh, sorry. I'll bring it up and then I'll block it for everyone in the room. Happily, yes. Yes, indeed. So there are other ways to send logs up from macOS. I believe you can use a managed agent from the AMA agent on that, or MMA. No, AMA on that to send up to Sentinel as well. If you don't want to use Defender, you can use a managed agent. And then the other way would be a third-party EDR solution like Sentinel-1. If you want to use Sentinel-1 or something like that to get logs that are maybe security relevant for that particular incident as well, unless you're trying to do things that are in the environment. Answering a question from the... One of these days, guys, we'll get audio correct. I'm telling you, one of these days. I'm still working on it at home, and I have a giant microphone that I've perfected for 3 years. Any other questions in the chat or out in the audience here? Has everybody had a good time so far? Woo! Hey, we're in Nashville, baby. It's a party. No. I'll let the CE come up here and do that. I gave a little bit of a story in the beginning. No, I gave a little bit in the beginning there. I don't know if you heard that or not. Yeah. Why is everybody sitting back here? I should have said, y'all come up. Ah. Okay, yeah, we did. I got a hat. Let me see if I can. Oh, Chad. I'm not sharing my screen still. I don't want to share my screen while I'm doing this because I don't know what's on there. Hold on. Let me unplug that for a sec. I'm going to my iCloud. You're like, what's this guy showing me? No, we are the security partner of the year for them the past 2 years. Going back to back, boys and girls, back to back. If I can find the swag. You guys are like, oh man, I've seen a picture of him fat. Now let's see a picture of him skinny. Yeah, I'm gonna show. This is the swag. One of the swags that we had. It says BlueVoyant on it. Let's see if it'll come up. So that's the swag that they gave us. It says BlueVoyant on it. It's like a champion shirt, really, you know. And it's got the 2 years on it, going back to back, and then they gave us a golf hat, right, too, that says back to back. You know, a little bit of the shared partnership there. Cool swag that we got, but yeah, that's the shirt they gave us. They gave us a T-shirt for that underneath, and I actually love that hat. It's a Nike golf hat, and I'm a Nike nerd. Wearing Nikes right now. So, any security questions now that you guys have seen me fat and skinny and everything in between, and I've made people laugh today. Hey, we could do that too. Let's talk about cloud adoption framework.
Who cares about this? That's your respectful. You're Microsoft giving you a bunch of Azure credits, right? Your CISO is probably talking to the CFO. And the CFO is telling the CISO, why are we not leveraging more of Microsoft security staff? So, as mentioned before, CISOs are disparate security tools. To get this built. So they gone to their teams, they said, we need to consolidate. They're using QRadar as a sound today, they're using CrowdStrike, because everybody used to think CrowdStrike is the best for ER. They're using a bunch of other security tools. Spent a lot of money trying to integrate those security tools. Never got the integration. Microsoft. Microsoft Defender. It just marries better together as a security team, better visible. Who cares about it? Chad is a security specialist. We settle together with Microsoft. It, make sure it's optimized in the environment, and we'll really take care of those. That's a little bit about, why Microsoft security. Nobody on the call.
No, nobody's gonna hear you. You're preaching to the choir over here. I'm over here trying to make sure I can hear you, and I can't hear you. So.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'm going to end it over here on my side. Team, thanks for coming out tonight. Really appreciate everybody coming in virtually. Really appreciate everybody coming in. Really appreciate everybody.